but they call themselves the natives. This is historical. But they are not native Indian Americans, is what I mean. And so to dress in Western clothing. So yeah, this hat, and there's another character behind him, and then he would throw a knife. I remember the movie by heart. And he has a sort of mad hat, a top hat that goes like a belly, and it's not very high, and it has a very wide brim. This was still well in the 1860s, but it is, I reckon it existed already back in the 1800 and 40s, yes, 1846. So this is, I think, is accurate. There is something, generally speaking, about that movie which is inaccurate. Is more, it did a genuinely good job at recreating things, at least for the 1860s. That everything they show, virtually speaking, everything they show on the movie, I do not care in real life if I observed it in the movie. There's nothing inaccurate, historically speaking. There's nothing that did not exist back then, or if it existed, it was only run by a minority of utter modernist people. No. But what is inaccurate, like in most movies, they did not get a step above and think, this white shirt is completely accurate, but would a character from that precise time, in that precise place, from that precise social class, actually wear a white shirt at that precise moment? Or for example, there is a lack of variety. For example, all those top hats are made not using the gossmaered technique. They are all made using, what they do is they have probably a woolen or perhaps even fur a hat, and then to add shellac or some sort of glue, varnish, whatever, and to add the plush on top. And some other ones are simply directed at fur or that wool, felt, which is dense, and so which they do not add anything. Basically, the two types of fur, the thick fur felt or wool felt, like Stetsons, and these are very thick. These are very heavy protective hats, and usually thicker than, for top hats to maintain the shape, usually thicker than a fedora felt, more like a bowler hat felt. But if they have a plush, the plush cannot hold by itself, it will just collapse like a cloth. So what they do is they add it on top. And sometimes they have money to make a wool felt instead of a fur felt, and then they would add the plush on top. And then during the 1810s, but it really became popular to do that as an option during the 1820s, they invented the gossamer technique, which is still used for example, by Henry hats, which provided the hats for the Queen Victoria series, and these are much more fragile, but the advantage is the initial cost is less because they use gossamer, which is a very thin cloth, which was used for cheese often and still is in some parts of France. And how traditional riding hats are made, they are made using gossamer, but it looks like wood. Why do they use gossamer? Is because wood, if you hit a branch or fall upon the floor, it might crack, it will crack, and the wood itself might go into your skull and hurt you, kill you or something. But the gossamer, because it is still a cloth, they add many layers. I think for a riding hat to add, how many hats explain all that? Because they make those hats, they will make all their hats using gossamer, or mostly all their hats. And for riding hats, usually they have 6 layers, or at the very least 4. So it becomes very thick and it feels like wood and it is heavy. But for I do not have them, I have them in France, but usually for silk top hats, it is only one, for the town weight, it is only one layer, and so it is very thin and very fragile, and when you press it, it creates a bump, a dent, it's called, and it cannot go away, and the only way would be to repair, and usually it costs more than getting another one. It cannot be reshaped in front of a steam thing. And during that precise era, during the 1840s, they really had 2 types of hats. So they had, for the top hats, for the bowler hats, which already existed, contrary to what people say, they were not called bowler hats, they were called round hats. And but they had not many of those. They mostly had top hats. But for top hats, really, they had the gossamer ones, and then they had many types. I mean, you could have a gossamer one. So the riding weight one is 2 plies of gossamer. So what they do is they have a gossamer frame, they add the shellac, which is a type of varnish. When they add it, it is hot. And as I explained for the glue, for the interlining for my shirt, the shellac itself will hold the gossamer to either the other piece of the gossamer. if one desires to add gossamer over gossamer, or if one desires a ton weight, a very light and fragile top hat, for example, they would have one layer of gossamer, add the shellac, add the plush silk on top. This plush silk which would not hold by itself but simply collapse like this handkerchief, like so. They would add it on top, and the shellac would hold like glue the plush silk onto the gossamer frame, but it will also, once dry, add the layer by itself. So for ton weight, they would have one layer. For a counterweight, they would have two layers, and it is still somewhat fragile, but it does protect a bit and is less fragile. And for the brim, usually it's 4 layers, and the brim feels like cardboard, but it is not, and it cannot break like cardboard. It is very hard. And so every time they add another layer, before they add shellac, one more gossamer, or you want a crash weight. Crash weight is 4 layers. So you add again one more layer of shellac, again one more layer of gossamer, you wait for it to dry. Once it is dry, again one smaller, when you've done 3 layers, again one more layer of shellac, one more layer of gossamer. Oh, and finally when it is dry, one more layer of shellac, and you add the silk plush, or whatever it is you want as a material. It could be fur. Nowadays silk plush has not been manufactured since, because they ever only did it in France, in mills in France. And the last mills were destroyed by each brother, which were fighting each other, and they each destroyed the mill of the other one. There were only 2 mills done. That was done in 1958 or 57. And so nobody knows how to recreate that material, and so it cannot be recreated. So what to do today, when it is all a vintage piece, it is really a fur that imitates the silk plush. But the irony is, initially silk plush was meant to imitate fur felt at a cheaper cost. And now they are using fur felt that tries to imitate the silk plush, that try to imitate the fur felt. So it is like a very rare example of reborrowing, like the French word redingote. No, the English word redingote, which initially was an English word called riding coat. The French used it as redingote, and then the British, we borrowed that word and said we'll call that coat a redingote. It's a very rare example of reborrowing, like with the fur felt thingy. Anyhow, back in the 1840s, it was, especially in the United States of America, to have the polythylleather beaver, which was genocided by humanity, for making basically top hats and hats in general. And so they would have had gossamer-made hats that still have a plush of actual fur, not silk plush. And they would also have had these old-fashioned hats made simply from felt, without any plush on top, so that they do not look as shiny, or not shiny at all. Like the character standing behind Bill the Butcher, who has a burgundy hat, and or maroon hat, precisely, and then some would be made, as I said, using, and then there are different types of fur. Some are nuptia fur, which is from, I think, a type of rabbit, but it was meant to be actually a type of seal, but usually they cheated and used another type of hair, or rabbit fur, which is very cheap, or hair fur, which is a big rabbit, a bit less cheap, the most expensive and the most durable, but the heaviest on the head. It felt like a helmet. I tried one once, $3, so it was not as high as the top, and still it felt like a helmet. It was a Stetson fedora, and only a fur fed, without any plush added material on top, without any gossamer, and it still was very heavy. So usually gossamer techniques were used for a plush fur. So for when the fur is not that heavy and looks very beautiful and plush, like they used on the leathers or the lining of very expensive overcoats. The same material, they want to make a hat out of it. This material is not dense. What they do, initially they would have a very heavy felt hat, use the varnish shellac, stick it onto it, stick that beautiful fur plush onto it. And then probably some people said it is so heavy, and by that time people were riding on horses less, they needed less protection, whatever. And so they came up with the French using that technique for the silk top hats. Why not use it for fur plush top hats? And so they used the gossamer technique. They started using that in the 1820s as per Wikipedia. So it might have been even before. I think by 1825